If you've been listening to the on-premise IT podcast utilizing Edge or listened into any of the Edge Field Day sessions, you know that Kubernetes is incredibly important to edge computing just like it is in the cloud. That's why I'm standing here today talking to Michael Maxey from ZEDEDA about how Kubernetes is used in the Edge and how Edge changes Kubernetes. Thanks for talking to me.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
So let's start a little bit with the sort of core question. I mean, Kubernetes was not intended to be an edge solution.
No, it wasn't.
And the edge has really radically different requirements, radically different infrastructure. Why does Kubernetes make sense at the edge?
Well, I think Kubernetes makes sense at the edge because it's the dominant container platform on the planet, right? And if you're using it in the cloud and you're using it everywhere across your enterprise, then it makes sense to use it at the edge.
Even though the edge is really
the edge is very different, right? So you would think like, hey, peanut butter and jelly, we have the edge and we have Kubernetes and they come together and it's this magic sandwich. But the reality is there's lots of challenges there. And our customers have been going down this road for a number of years. They've been deploying Kubernetes at scale, thousands of clusters around the world, and we've sort of plowed through a lot of those barriers. And we're happy to kind of talk about what we've seen and how we've been doing that.
Yeah, my understanding is that historically, ZEDEDA customers have been deploying Kubernetes on their own.
They have.
And I think that you've probably seen this increasingly, that Kubernetes is being used as a way to, almost as a packaging and description engine, in my mind. In other words, we're going to put things in containers. We need to have the right way to describe and package and deploy those containers. We need a way to orchestrate them. Kubernetes gives us that. Even though it wasn't really intended for this, it makes a lot of sense. And that's what you saw, right? Your customers were doing this whether you were involved or not.
Absolutely. I mean, everybody asks, like, hey, can you guys run Kubernetes? What does that look like? Help us do that.
And so now, I think that you guys are announcing today that you have your own Kubernetes, right?
That's right, yeah. So to date, all of our customers have been really kind of bring your own Kubernetes. And primarily smaller distributions, K3s, very, very common in our environment. We're announcing this Kubernetes distribution. It's a key component of the infrastructure. It's not the only piece, right? We work with a lot of partners, think Rancher and Rafe and all the Kubernetes companies out there to bring that solution together for our partners and for our customers.
Yeah, I'm a big Rancher fan and Rancher user myself. In fact, everything we do is actually run through Rancher nowadays. Nice. And it's a great solution. Very, very friendly, very flexible. So you're not going to be replacing that sort of thing, right?
Absolutely not.
You're providing basically the underlying layer that allows those orchestrators to run.
Exactly, right? And think of it like you might in Amazon or Google in the early days when they rolled out a Kubernetes service, right? They didn't build an orchestrator day one. They still don't have an orchestrator today. People use Rancher, people use Rafe. So we're very similar. We're rolling out the runtime that connects up to an orchestrator.
Mm-hmm. And it's important too because this is, as you said, it's not a roll your own thing. One of the unique challenges at the edge is the fact that generally you don't have a lot of staff, you don't have a lot of hands-on resources. You really need something that is proven, supportable, that just sort of works because
Absolutely.
You just don't know what's going to happen out there. And I think that it's smart to have Kubernetes be part of that just sort of works supported aspect of the infrastructure instead of having that be part of the bring your own. I mean, eventually there's got to be a point where customers are bringing their own applications.
Absolutely.
But having the Kubernetes platform be there and supported by ZEDEDA, I think, is really smart for these customers.
They're excited, and we are too. We think it's going to be a great offering, and it simplifies their life, right? One source of support, one source of delivery, and consistency across thousands of sites.
Yeah. So for the listeners who aren't aware of what ZEDEDA is, can you just tell us briefly kind of who you are and connect that into the Kubernetes story?
Sure. So ZEDEDA is an edge orchestration and management provider. Think of that as an infrastructure that we can run on small computers distributed across the world. So our customers deploy thousands or even tens of thousands of individual servers running in places like a retail store or an auto dealership or an oil well or in trucks, boats, trains, where we have a lot of transportation customers. And what we do is we allow them to manage that centrally and deploy workloads onto that server. And a workload can be a virtual machine, We see a lot of legacy, a lot of sort of things written in the 90s running in Windows, running right alongside a Kubernetes cluster where they're maybe doing data analytics or AI or something in the cluster itself. And we make it super easy for a customer to sort of set policy, the nodes then connect, pull down state, and make that happen. So we're built for scale. We've been doing it for about 7 years now. We've had production customers for almost 4 years now, and we're really sort of focused now on this Kubernetes piece and how do we make that as robust and secure as the rest of our offering.
Yeah, and I think that's the point, right? Is that people need something that's going to work in these edge environments. We have talked about on the podcast this last season. One of the points that we came to was the importance, as you say, of supporting both legacy applications and modern applications. I guess modern applications defined as sort of Kubernetes, microservices, containers, and so on. Especially at the edge, because the demands are being driven by various business units, various suppliers. As you say, some of these applications have been written to run on some old Windows machine. Some of them may be absolutely modern microservices applications, and yet all that stuff has to coexist and has to work together, right?
Absolutely. And it's also the security teams and the networking teams, right? It's not just the applications, it's how are you securing them and does it fit into the corporate policy and how do you bring all of that together onto one node in the middle of nowhere and keep their customers happy.
Exactly. And one of the things that we heard at our Edgefield Day event when ZEDEDA presented there was the importance of working with partners. This is, you're a company that partners with kind of everybody in the space, right? I mean, who's working with you on this Kubernetes announcement?
Yeah, on the announcement itself, it's the Kubernetes vendors you'd expect. So we're working with Rancher, we're working with Rafe. We have some other container management platforms that sort of came into our release as well. So there are scenarios where you may not want to run Kubernetes in 10,000 locations and you want a different container management platform. So we're working with IBM and Avasa and others. We have a really broad support on top of the ZEDEDA infrastructure that really brings that whole solution.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think that it's important because it reflects what we're seeing here at KubeCon, which is that it's a big and expanding environment. I'll say, I was at KubeCon last year. Here I am again this year. This one is obviously notably bigger and obviously has a lot more vendor presence. And I think that shows what's happening in the Kubernetes space right now. And the fact that companies that previously hadn't been involved in Kubernetes are getting more and more involved is interesting because what I'm hearing again and again is that the customers are asking for it. The customers are saying that Kubernetes is their new, environment, the environment in which they're deploying modern applications. It's interesting though, because as we talked about at the edge, some of the things that Kubernetes brings to the table are not all that, they're maybe not useful, they're maybe not really what it was designed for. What do you think of that? What are some of the sort of technical areas that Kubernetes maybe is more cloud-oriented instead of edge-oriented?
Well, it's hard to auto-scale on one node, right? Like, what are you going to auto-scale to? So there's certainly like features and characteristics of Kubernetes that are very cloud-specific. So some of the challenges, around Kubernetes that we've seen are really edge challenges as well, right? So your networking isn't always consistent. Often it's extremely unreliable or non-existent, right? And in the cloud, you can basically connect to your Kubernetes cluster whenever you want, push updates. That's not the case in the edge. So you have to think about networks, you have to think about access. The other real challenge is on the security front, right? These devices are in the wild, people steal them, people plug USBs into them, we've seen all kinds of crazy things happen. So you have to think about a security model that's bigger than your cluster, right? You have to think about physical access and the operating system, and did someone boot an operating system before you, and things like that. So you need to think a little bit beyond the Kubernetes space. But we bring a lot of that to bear. Like, we've been doing this for a long time. That's really a lot of the strength of our edge offering, is we solve a lot of those problems. And we make it really secure for our customers so that they know when they're deploying Kubernetes that it's their node, it's their software stack, and there's no funky stuff, I guess, going on the node.
Yeah, it's interesting what you say there, because indeed these are the same challenges that we see with edge deployments generally. What makes the edge? It's things like a varied and distributed locations, unreliable, unpredictable communications and connectivity, spotty support by on-site, hands-on staff.
Yeah, staff is key. I mean, we talk to our customers, and sending an IT person to fix something is a helicopter flight, and it's a full day, and it's $25,000-$30,000 just to get that person to the site. So you can't do that. Right? You can't brick a device. You have to really think about how is this always going to be available, and you have to architect your cluster around that. You have to architect your node around that. But just know the costs of mistakes are really high. So on the edge, it's definitely another challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, tell us a little bit, sort of what comes next for ZEDEDA. What should we be looking for in the coming quarters and in the coming year?
Yeah, so great question. I think we're heads down execution and have been for a long time. We'll continue to sort of deliver new services. So we're super excited about this Kubernetes service. We think it's going to really make our customers' lives really easy, really fast to try things. As a company, we're going to continue to execute through our teams and through our OEMs. We have great partners in VMware and Rockwell and Emerson that are also out there sort of using our solution and pushing new applications and new use cases to their customers. So we're going to continue build. We're going to continue grinding. It's what we do, and stay tuned. You'll see some good stuff.
Excellent. And as for me, I'm thrilled to be here at KubeCon. It's great that the CNCF and the Linux Foundation supported bringing Gestalt IT to KubeCon these 2 years. Keep an eye on gestaltit.com and techfieldday.com for more great content where we're going to be covering KubeCon, Kubernetes, and of course the Edge. Thanks for listening.
Right on. Thank you.